Hey everybody, it's Kara Crossway Brindle back for another video. My special guest today is Tiffany from Saints Billing Services. Yay! Hi, Tiffany.
Hi, thank you.
Of course. I had started before we even hit record for our viewers. I told Tiffany, I feel like I already know her. I send her lots of people. She is part of our Medicaid community, which is why I'm so excited that we're doing a video together. Tiffany, what do you want people to know who haven't heard of you? Want to do a quick plug for the business so we can talk shop?
Yes, I own Saints Billing Services. We are a local Colorado-based billing and insurance credentialing company. And so we're just here to help providers that either don't know where to start or they're halfway through the process, but we're here and we offer a lot of support for both billing and credentialing and just getting your feet wet.
Yes, yes. And I actually got to look at your website that you had just changed recently. And what I loved about it in the messaging is if you've gone to another biller, if you've tried this and it was horrible or someone did something messy and not great, you're happy to help, which I love because I think a few people have come my way saying, I went to someone else, it was awful. They made a lot of mistakes. They don't understand Colorado business, credentialing, law stuff. Which is why I love that you're local and why I happily send people to you because I know that you understand Colorado, which is everything about Medicaid and private insurance.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, I know we talked about jumping on this video because something happened recently where you were helping somebody credential with Medicaid, which is obviously my passion as well as many providers as we can get into the panel, the better. And they had a different kind of negative experience with Medicaid. Do you want to speak to what happened and why this became a thing for you and I?
Yes. I run into this from time to time. Providers just have this fear of, I've heard horror stories or I've heard all of these things. So this provider, we've spoken the last couple of months, and I thought that, I had reassured her, but there was a woman that is with the network that had a video that the provider watched, and it scared her so much. The woman had talked about recoupments and auditing and just that scare, I called her fear tactics and scare tactics, that now the provider, she just has so much anxiety that she's I can't move forward. I can't even focus on this. And I hear that so often from people that are I don't want to do it. I'm afraid. What about recoupments? What about auditing and all of these things? And I try my best, just reassure them that with me, we're going to go over all of the things to look out for to avoid. You can't really avoid an audit, but to avoid recoupments and avoid anything
Sure.
bad happening.
Mhm.
But yeah, at the end of the day, I did refer her to you, even because you are another Medicaid expert. I was here's another third party person that is not affiliated with me or Medicaid employee. And she can maybe help you get some reassurance. And
Yeah.
hopefully
Mhm.
she does. And I hate hearing from providers just the fear and anxiety they have, because we need more providers to support Medicaid members.
Oh, yeah. We have a mental health crisis. There's not enough people, no matter what the Medicaid panel folks say, there's not enough providers. And we can say that with a smile on our face. We're come on now. But yeah, I appreciate when you reached out saying this is what just happened. And I know you'd reached out saying I did send this person your way. Hopefully they re-engage. And if they watch this video, maybe they will. No, and I'm not scary and I'm happy to help. But yeah, this is a huge frustration. So we hear some pretty common myths. If we were to list them out, we hear things about fear of the paperwork being too daunting. That's number one in my book. When people come into a consult of tell me this is bearable because I'm hearing it's unbearable.
Yes.
Audits, of course, is a fear. And then that clawback recoupment. You said it the nice way, which is recoupment. You'll also hear it in this video and beyond as clawbacks, where they take back the money. And that can make or break a business depending on how significant that amount is. So let's break this down. Tiffany, in your experience, let's talk about paperwork for a second. What would you tell our viewers about paperwork and managing Medicaid expectations?
I love that Medicaid has it very clearly written on their website that these are our documentation standards. So I always use that as that reference point, so they know this is what Medicaid is saying. Here's it in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do go over, I have some saved progress note examples from other providers that I give them, because a lot of people I didn't learn progress notes in school, so I don't even know where to start. So I do have a few examples that I provide, just to kind of give them that this is what it looks like. It doesn't have to be crazy and intimidating. And just reassuring them that if you are looking at this checklist and it's pretty easy, and you're doing it on the front end, that the documentation expectation really isn't that. I don't think it's really that big of a deal, because I mean, you should be collecting most of that data anyways for
Mhm.
liability and, ethical reasons. So, I mean, answer a couple extra questions and you'll be confident to know that when an audit comes, you're good to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tiffany and I are both part of this Medicaid Facebook community where this video is going to live most likely. So we can reiterate like any changes that happen with documentation. The first place we tend to put it is there because there's 1,200 providers at this moment in time who are like, I need this information. So Medicaid isn't always the best at communicating changes, but that's where Tiffany and Saints Billing Services or myself or anyone who's part of the advocate part of Medicaid, we're trying to put stuff out there so that we can share that forthcoming with each other and say, hey, heads up. So yeah, if you're not coming to a professional business like Tiffany's, then you might be coming into a consult with me where we look at all the paperwork. I call it the Super Six. We look at 6 documents that they require. My most popular course is a 5-minute or less note. So like we're all trying to make this manageable. So for viewers who are listening to this for the first time, it is totally possible to manage the paperwork. EHRs have made this much more accessible than ever. Like I come from community mental health, old school, everything was paper. That was daunting.
Yes.
But now with EHRs, it's all plugged in. It's all there because you have to bill anyway. So like it really is a couple check boxes, a couple boxes, 5 minutes or less notes are totally possible. It's probably why that course is so popular because people are like, show me how.
Yes.
So that is a myth. We've debunked that one. Number 2 myth, audits. Talk to us, Tiffany, about what you're hearing about audits from folks.
So the negative that I hear is, oh my gosh, I don't want to be audited. Oh my gosh, what all of the things, because they do have that back in the day when everything was paper and the auditors came physically to your office. And that's my experience is they came to our office and we pulled all the charts off the file. Now with EHRs and the technology, one, you don't have to have that fear of people just showing up with their, luggage to do the audits. It's all electronic.
Yeah.
So I do reassure them that, hey, the several audits that I've been a part of as Saints Billing, it really is pretty simple. They send you the paperwork and say, these are the charts that we're auditing, and they give you time. So if you're doing all of the things on the front end, like that your progress notes meet those requirements and all the other documentation, your treatment planning and all the things. Then whenever they send you the letter for an audit, you've got it all. And I help support that on the front end to give them that feedback so that it's not if you get audited, it's when. And we're just going to load you up on the front end to make sure that you're doing it right. And the only thing you're going to have to do is click print and then you're good, or fax, however they submit it. But I mean, auditing, it is a pain. That's about the extent of it, but it's not a big deal. Everybody gets audited, and people like you and I were here to help success. So
absolutely. And so I tell people if they're like a solo practitioner or a small group practice, like we're little fish in the big pool of everyone taking Medicaid funds. So, those big community mental health agencies, they get audited every 6 months because they're taking $10 million of Medicaid funds. So like they're on the radar. And so that might bring the anxiety down a notch as well for folks watching this video. In my mind, there are at least 4 types of audits. So some of you might be curious about what those 4 types are. This is where I'm happy to have you come into a consult or talk to Tiffany, but like broad strokes, we've got a documentation audit, we've got a technical audit, we have a 411 audit that happens every January. So we go on our little Facebook group and say, oh, I won the lottery, which is not always the fun thing to be part of the 411 claims. And then there's the fraud audit, which is more like the one Tiffany just mentioned about like the suitcase, they're bringing it in, they're coming into your space and they're like setting up shop. Most of us, that fear is the image in my head is the Matrix, where the guys with like no affect, like no emotion in their face with the sunglasses come in and like set up shop for 3 days and they just make your life hell. That is not, as Tiffany named, how audits look now. It's all very electronic. It's very streamlined. It's 2 or 3 documents at a time, unless you have been suspected of fraud. And then it becomes more like that intense Matrix example of like they're showing up and they're checking things out. Most of us will be fortunate not to have that happen. More likely, of all 4 audits, the 411 audit is more likely that you're going to land with the 2 or 3 documents they ask for. So if y'all have questions about that, Tiffany and I can both be resources on what those audits entail, what they're looking for. We're trying to stay on top of that every year because that 411 audit happens every year. And they always add something in my experience every year. So audits are not needing to be scary. They are something to be normalized because it's part of being a provider and it's not going to happen very often, hopefully, for each of you. The last fear that we had was clawback/recoupment. So, Tiffany, what would you say to audience folks or people watching this about that?
Yeah. So professionally with Saints Billing, I've had very few recoupments and clawback situations. Um,
Hey.
yes, yes. So, and that's, what I tell people is like, I have a very high success rate in general and very low recoupment clawback. The biggest recoupment reasoning I see is a diagnosis issue.
Mm,
Because I mean, on the other end, at the end of the day, the person that received that claim and is processing it is a human, usually, and they make mistakes as well. I hate it because for me, I sent in a claim, you guys signed it and paid it for me. Why isn't that done?
right.
But it's not. So then in 6 months or 18 months, even another person goes in and audits things and it's like, oh, you used a diagnosis that actually you are not able to bill for
Mhm.
whatever reason. It's just a non-covered diagnosis for you. And so they are recouping. That one is oftentimes valid, and that part sucks. But
Yeah.
again, that's on the front end why I tell people these are your covered diagnoses. Please try to stay in your lane. Um, Medical diagnoses are a really big one for some reason that I see some providers like an LPC and an LMFT. The medical diagnosis may be valid for that person, but you are not treating that in session.
Correct. Yep.
So
That's
that's
the
like a,
distinction. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, so that again is something that you get with me, like on that front end. I'm loading you up with that information to prepare you for, making those distinctions and making sure that you are audit friendly. And one, it's audit friendly, but then also it's going to decrease your chance of recoupments and clawbacks because nobody wants to pay them back.
Yeah.
Um,
It's painful.
yes. The other thing that I see, unfortunately, at least once a year is one of the regions likes to send out a scary letter saying the 90785 code, we're going to recoup it for whatever reason, or you build too
Mm.
many 90837 codes. And so this past summer, I did have a couple of providers get a 90785 that was the letter said you can't bill an E&M service, but they were not E&M providers. They're not
Hmm.
medical providers. They're just an LMFT.
Sure.
So, disputing those and they were all, that invalid. So no recoupment was had to been made by the provider. But the diagnosis ones are probably the biggest ones. But
Hmm.
again, avoid it at all costs by learning everything on the front end and just making
Yep.
sure that you check all those boxes so that you're audit friendly and then recoupment friendly.
Yeah, absolutely. So even if it's a small amount of money, it adds this insult to injury if we have to pay it back, especially if the service was rendered, which it usually is. I hope none of you all are submitting claims for things you didn't do. Let's just put that in there. Like that should be a given. But
Yeah.
yeah, so diagnosis, I know a big change. We're filming this in December of 2023. In January of 2024, we'll have autism spectrum disorder diagnoses allowed to be billed, which has been in the medical bucket, but should also be in the mental health bucket. To be clear, as Tiffany already alluded to, we're showing that diagnosis or reflecting that diagnosis as valid if someone else has done the formal assessment, right? So most of us as master's level clinicians, LPC, LMFT, LCSW, we don't get to give that diagnosis, but we can say we honor it because we're doing some of the work around that. So that I think is the distinction as we all gear up for January 2024 when that's possible. That will eliminate some of the recoupment that I think Tiffany has seen because right now it lives in the medical side of things. So anytime we put it on a claim as a mental health professional, it's kicking back as like that's not your job. That's stay in your lane kind of idea. So we'll have to navigate that a little bit. But yeah, usually it's wherever they put a diagnosis that shows up as medical, that's automatically going to cause an issue for all of us as mental health folks. So I can definitely echo what Tiffany has shared. Other things that have come up just this year in 2023, making sure that supervisors are signing off with full credentials, that they are signing off on notes. This came up just this week that we're filming of like, please just freaking sign the notes. Like, how hard is it? There's my snark for all of you. Love you all, but like, this is not a discussion we should be having. Like, sign off on it. You're a supervisor. Um, Also, things like not having box 32 and 33 of your CMS 1500 form filled out, that caused issues. Organizational NPIs need to be reflected for group practices, not individual NPIs. So lots of things we could get into the weeds about. That's not the purpose of this video, but just know those are the things Tiffany and I are seeing in our capacity of serving other colleagues who are doing this work. Um, Other final thoughts, Tiffany? I know this is a lot in just a short video, but obviously I want you to talk about all the services you guys offer. But before we get there, final thoughts for folks who are watching.
Yeah, I mean the biggest takeaway, I mean, don't be afraid to take Medicaid. Don't be afraid to jump that fence and just take the plunge, join the network. There are so many members out there that for whatever reason, they're not able to find a provider. And that's geographical or, the medical piece of it, but there's just so many reasons that
Mhm.
we need more providers. So, if Kara isn't a resource for you, I'm a resource and vice versa. So please just, reach out and get those resources so that we can get you on board with Medicaid so that you can just add that to your arsenal and see more clients.
Love that. Yes, like we are. I mean, for how snarky I was on this video, like thank you, Tiffany, for anchoring me. Like Medicaid is still a passion point for all of us. Like we do this, we go through all the hoops because we love the clients we serve. We get to serve so many diverse, meaningful clients in this work. Plus, from a business perspective, it's very lucrative to take Medicaid here in Colorado. So I'm going to name that as well, of like not just the therapist hat, but the business owner hat of like Medicaid has something of value for us in private practice. So, that's where hopefully the resources of Tiffany and I, the Facebook group, and any other place. I think my takeaway from Tiffany sharing today is don't bootstrap this together. Like invest in some support to do it right the first time, because there is the painful story of I did this on my own and I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's why Tiffany and I do what we do. Is like we want you to feel empowered, we want you to feel confident, we want you to feel like you have mastery with Medicaid instead of this fear that's showing up. And because Medicaid isn't always clear on what they want, at least without digging through all of their website, this is why some of you want to come to us so we can streamline this, right? Of like, it doesn't have to be this painful. So please don't think you have to bootstrap this together or do this on your own and then find out a very painful lesson. We'd rather you talk to your colleagues, talk to us, use the Facebook group, whatever you need to do it well. That might stop some of these myths from continuing forward of like, oh, we don't have to hear the saga or the bad story if we've got more people with support of each other, hopefully. So, and that was a mouthful, but Tiffany, now is the time to share how people can reach you, because I think that's really important for folks who are like, hey, this sounds good. Next steps.
Yes. So we have a phone number, which I'm not going to say on here, but it's all on our Facebook. We're conveniently located on Facebook as well. We have a website that just went through a facelift, so it's been updated. It is www.saintsbillingservices.com. And then that is the same as our Facebook, Saints Billing Services. You can contact us through Messenger from there. My phone number is listed on both places as well. So I'm open for consultations. I have spots open for both credentialing and billing providers. I do a lot of consultation, especially right now. So even if it is just to reach out and have a chat to help you get down the right direction, I mean, we're here for that.
Yeah. And that's what I love about your facelift at your website. You're like, hey, we actually support the little person, like someone who's not a big corporation, big agency, big group practice. So for folks who are just getting started with Medicaid, like Tiffany is a wonderful resource for you. That's why I send so many of you to her, because I know that she can serve you at a price point that's reasonable for your business in its growth stage. And those consults are hugely valuable, right? Of like, I have a question, Tiffany's an option, I'm an option, we've got people. So I'm just really grateful, Tiffany, that you're willing to talk to me about those myths and what you were seeing in the community so we could just kind of debunk a few things and say, this is worth it. This is worth taking Medicaid, because you and I love what we do. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom here in this video today.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you again for having me on here. I love collaborating with you. So yeah, providers, please don't steer away from Medicaid.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Hopefully you feel empowered. If not, give us some feedback from the video, but we will be a force to continue to be here. Like we will be available if you need us, and know that those questions can be answered in all of these different places. So I hope there's a lot of food for thought for all of our viewers. We'll see you in a future video. See you next time.